And what did you learn? You can learn that fear keeps us from having optimum performance. Fear can keep us from being all that we could be. The greatest performers are those that are willing to fail. So now we're going to do an experiment.
Okay.
So because you're a learner,
Uh-huh.
you wouldn't be doing this if you weren't. I want you to take 3 fingers, put it in your mouth.
Today I have Daryle Doden on my show, School of Leaderships. Daryle, thanks for joining.
Glad to be here, Owen.
So my first question I actually have for you that I wanted to ask was, so what strategies have you found effective in mentoring and developing future leaders with your organization?
Strategies?
Yeah.
Don't try to do it unless they're ready. So if the student isn't ready, it's worthless. So when the student has questions, I feel a strong desire to try to give a beneficial answer. From my realizing is from my perspective, which is a limited perspective, and that a good student is going to get multiple perspectives, not to pick one. That's confirmation bias, where I go to enough people until somebody tells me what I want to hear. But the best students go to at least 3 to 4 experts in a field and find out what they have to say about it. And I love talking to those kind of students.
Are there any ways that you can push that student to learn, or is it just up to them that they have to be ready?
I think learning comes from an internal drive. One of the best books, if not the best book that I've ever read on this, is Carol Dweck. Carol Dweck wrote a book called Mindset. I think it was written in 2007, but Carol Dweck did her studies in the 80s and the 90s and continued. And what she discovered, Owen, was something in her own life and others that she found very fascinating, and that is that the more successful you became, the more fearful you became. So she discovered this in her doctoral studies. She was a professor of doctoral students that were in their PhD for some field, and she found that the performance curve actually decreased the further they got in their success. So these were the top students, right? I mean, I forget, Ben, was she at Columbia at that time? And then she went to Stanford. Were those the 2 schools? But I think she was Columbia at the time. So you're talking about the best of the best. And she found those students begin failing. And she couldn't figure out why, with these students that had always been the peak performers, that suddenly developed insecurities, imposter syndrome, and so forth. So she started doing studies. And in her studies, she started with children. Well, let me describe the experiment. The experiment was the kids would sit in a room by themselves and have puzzles. And the kids would be given some reward, if they completed the puzzle, they'd be left alone. And they recorded and the self-talk and everything that they would say. And the puzzles became increasingly difficult. And about 80% of the kids, all of the kids would get to the point of failure. Then they would repeat the experiment. And they would do the same thing again. And as a second experiment, the kids would fail earlier than they failed earlier. So 80% of the kids failed earlier and didn't do the complexity they had done before. But 20% of the kids went further. And what she discovered after research is that the difference between what she calls a fixed mindset and a growth mindset, and that 80% of the populace at an early age has a fixed mindset where the desire is to only know what I already know, to not be challenged, and to be comfortable in what I already believe. For fear of failure, and I want to have security and safety more than I want to have learning. But these subset of kids, and then adults as the research went on, had a desire to learn and grow that exceeded the fixed mindset of wanting to be safe, secure, and feel good about themselves. And that's when she realized, she called it mindset, the new psychology of success, which is a foundation of a lot of the learning and growth behavior, that those that are the greatest performers are those that are willing to fail, not afraid of failure. They don't want to fail. However, they realize their real effort, their real measurement is 2 things: effort and growth. You know, how much effort did he put in and what did they learn? What was the effort? What did they learn? I had an example of that with their own grandchild. I just read the book. And I went, I've always worked on Saturdays. The way that I work with the family is carve out times. And so we had a family night, we had church time, and we had different things we carved out. As long as we didn't have a family event on Saturday, I allowed myself that as my cushion day, and the family understood that. So some of the family was at the lake and the grandkids were at the lake, and I came back to the office at around 4 o'clock or something. They say, "Hey, Beepall, come watch us ski." So I'm have a 9-year-old granddaughter in there. She's now 20, I think a 23-year-old, and going to be give birth to our first great grandchild. But she was about 9 years old at the time. And she had accomplished some things on the knee board that she wanted me to see. And so I got in the boat, and she's staying inside the wake. She's not going across the wake. And she'd been going across the wake. Her family, her mom told me, her dad told me they were in the boat. And they kept saying, I'll just say her name, Sally, go outside the wake. You can do it. You can do it. And she 3 times went around the lake, and she couldn't get outside the wake. She couldn't go over. And her mom told me, she said, just before you came, she really wiped out really badly and hurt herself a little bit. And she's afraid, she can't get outside the wake. So she came into the boat. She's crying. She's frustrated. Her parents are saying, "You knew you could do it. Why didn't you do it? You knew you could do it. Why didn't you do it?" Well, that wasn't helping her. She's upset. Well, pretty soon somebody else is out there and they're watching. And so I just decided I'm going to do an experiment. And so we were over by the side, and I said, "Hey, Sally." I said, "Sally, that was amazing." "What?" I said, "Do you know how many 9-year-olds would be able to hold on to go 3 times around the lake? You went 3 times effort. You went 3 times around the lake." I said, "Give me a high five." She gives me this floppy high five. So we made a little progress. And I said, "You know what? You knew you could go over the wake, but you were just afraid." And that's what fear can do to us. Fear can keep it. You made a great effort. And what did you learn? You can learn that fear keeps us from having optimum performance. Fear can keep us from being all that we could be. That's all I said. About 2 minutes later, maybe 3, she said, "Dad, let me try again." On her own. I just did those 2 things. She went out, back in, over, back to the cheers of the crowd, back and forth, because she managed her fear. We don't overcome our fear. We manage our fear. Our fear can be a great motivator. So the answer to your question is, I am interested in those that want to learn and are more concerned about effort and learning than they are about failure and those kind of things. So you can pick up pretty quickly who has a fixed mindset. They're certain of their certainty. It's okay to be certain, but never be certain of your certainty. I'm never certain of my certainty. I always could be wrong. But you have to believe that. Insecure people can't believe they can be wrong. And so when you're insecure, you have to be right, because to be wrong, that would create fear. I don't know if that answers your
No,
question.
that answers it really, really well.
So now we're going to do an experiment.
Okay.
So because you're a learner,
Uh-huh.
you wouldn't be doing this if you weren't. I want you to take 3 fingers, put it in your mouth. Get in there. Open up. Okay. I want you to practice that several times every day, because when you talk like this, you really can't be heard, and you think you're talking well. And the reason you think you're talking well is because it's going into your head.
Not coming out.
It's not coming out. Your teeth are blocking it. So you have to open your mouth really wide to fill, particularly for a non-vocal person. That I don't think you're probably not a singer. If you've been a singer.
Oh, God, you don't want to hear me sing.
Oh, yeah. No, you ought to take some voice lessons. You would do well. You've got a big bass profundo voice. You'd have a great voice. But in singing, you have to learn to do that. And so I'm not going to change any vocal production here. I'm only going to change my mouth. I didn't change anything. The same amount of diaphragmatic air was coming through, all just in opening my mouth. And and you have a lot to say and a lot you've learned, and you want people to hear it.
He does pick up.
And all you'd have to do, you've got all of
Yeah.
the tools, is just open your mouth wider. So what do you think was your experience that caused you to be insecure in your voice? I can't be a singer. Did you have was there an event in your life?
Actually, yeah, there was. Yeah.
Tell us about it.
When I was a kid, I used to, what was that? It's like it was like a rock thing on the Wii. Was it Guitar Hero? I think it was Guitar Hero. I used to sing a lot, and then I just got made fun of.
Isn't it
So I just
interesting
stopped.
how those kind of emotional events have an impact for life? It's incredible. The childhood hurts. Somebody may have not meant anything by it, but we took it. It was in a vulnerable time, and we took it very seriously and internalized it, and it becomes a limiter. But I had some of those as well. For me, it was a good thing because I'm arrogant enough the way it is. But what would I have been like if I hadn't had some childhood hurts? So hurts are not always bad, but they're bad if we internalize them to such a degree that it becomes part of our identity.
So going back to that then, how can someone like just embrace it?
That is a great question. This is so simple. Brilliance is taking complexity and make it simple without losing the complexity. And if you think about that, that's what great scientists do. They take great complexity, E = mc squared. That's a pretty simple formula, but it represents great complexity. So this is a great complexity, but it's allowing the hurts to make you better rather than bitter.
I know there's a lot of leaders out there that want to be leaders, but I guess I would say like they pile things up and then they kind of like shove it to the side or forget about it. What's another way where you can dig deeper into yourself, let that leader rise in you?
That's a great question. I'm going to answer it in a highly philosophical way, but hopefully not too philosophical that it doesn't communicate. Life is best understood in threes. So this is the foundation for what I'm going to say. And there's a reason. It's interesting. There's all kinds of psychology behind why threes are important. Three-legged stool. If you just think about all of the threes, if you're an artist, threes are better than twos, so you want 3 windows, you don't want 2 windows. The deity is 3. And so life consists of morality, of relationships, and of economic value propositions. So that's what countries are successful are threes. And there are 3 things that if we do will set us apart from others. One is to outsmart others. Outsmarting others is not based upon being more intelligent than. You outsmart others by thinking differently and doing differently than the norm. I'll just give you one crazy example for me. I won't talk about the weather. You'll never hear me talk about Indiana weather, except that I love it. But listen to the conversations that are going around you. People are impacted every day by their thoughts about the weather. Every day. Why would you allow the weather to determine your attitude towards life? It's irrelevant. It's an uncontrollable condition. I can only control those things I can control. So I can control my attitude, but I can't control the weather. So either the weather's going to control my attitude or my attitude's going to control the weather, if you will. And so to outsmart others is to think differently than. Not to outsmart them in the sense of being smarter than they are, but not to go down the road that people go down that creates failure, that creates, and it starts with attitude. Attitude is 90% of life. And I decided that today was going to be a good day. Didn't wake up today and decide, is today going to be a good day?
One more thing before we end this. I want to go back to the hope, when you were talking about hope. A lot of people will try for years and years and years, and then all of a sudden they'll just stop because nothing's came or come yet. How do you keep on holding on to hope when you haven't seen the results? Or when do you know to switch?
I think that's a great question. It's really a good question. And there is not the answer. So this isn't the answer. These are answers. It's a recognition that it's the journey, not the destination, that gives joy to life. Number two, it's realizing the goal is not happiness. God's goal for us is life, liberty, and the pursuit of holiness. That's vastly different than the American dream of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those two stand in diametric opposition to each other. God doesn't call us, life in our Constitution is that somebody can't take my life. Life under God's economy is that we're already dead. This one is somebody can't kill you. This one is you're already dead, and I want to give you life. I want to give you life that's eternal. I want to give you life that's spiritual. Liberty over here is that I can have the freedom to do my own thing within certain constraints. In God's economy, liberty is freedom from myself and freedom from my sin. And that's a whole different liberty. And happiness over here is the right of ownership and those things. But the pursuit of holiness has become more like Jesus. If I have the right goals, then whatever's happening to me is giving me life, liberty, and the pursuit of holiness. And I want these. But those are radically different from each other. And most people, even the Christian community, have brought in that this life and this liberty and this happiness is the essence of life, and that's not the biblical, that's not Jesus' path.
Thanks for your wisdom. I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.